Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Earthly Headlines. We're going to talk about Neanderthals and Ice Age cave art. It's kind of like a double episode going over two different articles that are kind of related. So the first one concerns cave art that's about 12,000 years old, so about 10,000 BC. And they had long suspected that this cave art existed, but it was just covered by centuries old graffiti from like 500, 400 years earlier. And the reason why it was suspected for so long was because this was a part of eastern France that these caves are in that had all kinds of other Paleolithic artwork by these ancient people, presumably Homo sapiens. Although there are Neanderthals who there has been evidence in the past of them doing cave art and other artistic work as well. Basically, the general pattern is more and more stuff is coming out that is, quote, humanizing these Neanderthals and kind of going against the grain of what used to be conventional assumptions of the Neanderthals as violent, warlike, and always in physical conflict with each other, and even their hunting methods were thought to be very primitive as well. Like they didn't fight at range and that kind of stuff. But we'll go into that later. So there are these two caves called Grotte d'Agneau. My French is horrible. Which is located in eastern France, and here's the map. So this is a site right here next to this pin. So a lot of this part of France, as you get closer and closer to the Alps especially, they found a lot of different Paleolithic evidence from basically the Paleolithic period, that similar time around this area. So that's why a lot of scientists thought that these caves must not have been any different. And, you know, over time, people will come across these caves. I mean, they've been written about in historical accounts for a long time. The researchers finally had enough, and they decided to use cutting-edge technology to figure out what exactly the cave walls depicted. And I have a picture of it. Okay, so here's a picture of it. Obviously, it wasn't written in white. This is the highlighted version. This is an example of what they were drawing, and it's actually... Here's why these cave paintings are very important. Number one, it's not easy to draw stuff very well, and the fact that they had the wherewithal to stop and do this is indicative of a lot of things. So it kind of goes against the conventional knowledge that these people had no imagination whatsoever. I mean, this clearly they had some sort of abstract visualization going on, like a visualization process going on in their minds for them to do this. So more and more credit should be given to these people. And again, these are people, right? These are supposedly Homo sapiens. So 12,000 years is not that long ago. So we've really, a pattern that I see when I read a lot more and more articles such as these that announce all these new findings and discoveries, it kind of points to the fact that humans, although there are vast differences between those anatomically modern humans and us, obviously, like cultural differences and stuff like that, but the way their mind works and their perception is actually more and more humanized, so to speak, even though we are talking about humans. But so they're more and more like us is what I'm trying to say. So like I said, they use this cutting edge scanning technology to look past the graffiti layers, kind of like how LiDAR was used to look past the canopy and to map out what was on the ground in the Amazon and other parts of South America. They were able to use this technology to reconstruct the carved prehistoric images of a horse and a deer, which is this photo right here. So over time, many people visited the location. They left their graffiti, like they wrote their names, they wrote their date, some stick figures and stuff like that. For over 150 years, the archaeologists have come in and out of this part of Burgundy, and they found a bunch of different remnants of Paleolithic culture. And this is with like really dead reckoning. They weren't using all these different instruments that we use now. So there are so many Paleolithic sites in this part of France that archaeologists have long thought that there must be cave art in not only this cave, but there are probably a bunch of other caves that they have yet to even find, because it's a very dense Paleolithic region of Europe, and there are probably, think of all the nooks and crannies that might be in your local mountains where you live, and multiply that by how much. Look how big Eastern France is. I mean, there are a lot of places for these people to have come across. And however, these do stand as the deer and horse paintings, rather, they stand as the district's first examples of cave art. So yeah, they're the first, so they might not be the last. So after they revealed the figures, they reconstructed the artwork with image processing software, and then they carbon 14 dated the charcoal in the cave, and they came up with a date of 12,000 years. This region of France, again, it's significant because it represents a zone where modern humans may have encountered Neanderthals. Between a period 80,000 years to like 20,000 years ago, it's long. That's like the magic period where, well, Neanderthals lived until 40,000 years, but then there was evidence up to early 20,000 years that there was some sort of mingling going on with Neanderthals, and we know now for sure that Neanderthals and anatomically modern humans, they weren't the only ones that were mingling with them. There's also the Denisovans. So Neanderthals should be given more credit than we already do. And so they're going to plan further investigations of the site, which will probably bring out even more evidence of not only these interactions, but probably more cave paintings. And who knows, maybe there might be a painting with a Neanderthal person and a regular person next to each other. And if that happens, man, that's smoking gun evidence right there that they at least acknowledged each other. So from this cave painting article, I'm going to go over to this next one. And this one kind of tries to, it not just kind of, but it does dispel the notion that Neanderthals were at the very least just as violent as modern humans. So let's take a look at them. First of all, part of the reason, the older perception of Neanderthals as these brutes were, they compared the head injuries suffered by Neanderthals to the earliest modern humans living during the Upper Paleolithic, so 80,000 to 20,000 years ago around here, and they found that the groups experienced similar levels of head trauma. These new findings challenge the common assumption that Neanderthals lived a particularly violent life and struggled every day to survive. And here's like a dramatic depiction. And they thought this for a lot of reasons. There were case-by-case studies of each Neanderthal skeleton that they found, and they all showed a high number of injuries, especially head injuries. And one hypothesis they ventured out there was the risk of highly mobile hunter-gatherer lifestyle in the Ice Age conditions and attacks by carnivorous animals, coupled with the fact that they only use close-range, non-projectile hunting weapons, which obviously brings forth even more dangers than you would attacking from range. The new study was a population-wide analysis of Neanderthals and Upper Paleolithic humans who were living at that time of the Neanderthals, instead of this case-by-case type of approach. So it's pretty interesting how they came up with their findings. So first of all, they analyzed a collection of fossils containing more than 800 samples, and then they sorted them by the type of head trauma they had, whether they're male or female, their age when they died, the level of preservation of the remains, and the location where they were found. So no matter what statistical model they applied, across the board there was no difference in injury rates between the two species, between Neanderthals and modern humans. The hypothesis is pretty much refuted that the Neanderthals were more prone to injuries than humans were. So it's really interesting why the academics want to keep pushing this idea that Neanderthals were just brutes, when really all this should be reconsidered. I said earlier in the video that they keep finding more and more data that contradicts this kind of brutish stereotype. So, like I said, they've made cave art. They've used sophisticated hunting techniques. They knew how to start fires. I did a video on that a few months ago. And their posture was better. So they weren't like hunched over people that were kind of, like this primitive type of posture. They actually kind of had this noble look about them. Plus they were huge. They had bone density. They were 200 pounds and like 5'7". They were wiry. They were very physically imposing humans. Again, they weren't shy either. They weren't like this reclusive branch of the genus Homo. They were actually going out there. They were intermingling with people, modern humans and the Denisovans, and maybe even another unknown species. And maybe there is a whole... They're so misunderstood, I would venture to guess, that they might have even had some sort of language. There's no books, obviously, written by them. Nothing survived. There's no writing that they've found yet. But, I mean, if they were creating art, then that means they had some sort of capacity for the abstract, for imagining the abstract. And this is why I wanted to make the video about these Neanderthals and this cave art 12,000 years ago, is because perhaps maybe modern humans got the idea to make cave art from Neanderthals. Like maybe there was not only an exchange of genetic information, there's probably cultural information shared. I mean, there's no evidence that they lived amongst each other, although the Denisova cave kind of says otherwise between the Denisovans and Neanderthals. But as far as modern human goes, Neanderthals didn't really coexist with them in camps. But who knows? Maybe they traded with them. Maybe they treated each other like different people from different countries, maybe. Although they probably didn't have the concept of countries back then. Maybe just hunting territory. But even so, I think there's more to the story than most, even the average person seems to understand. So let me know what you guys think. Maybe there were a contingent of Neanderthals that specialized just in hunting, and that's just what we so happened to find. But maybe that's just what it was, a contingent of people who were assigned to hunt the big game and bring it back to their village where there were other people living there who had different jobs. That could be a possibility, right? There's no direct evidence of that, but maybe. What I'm trying to say is that the possibilities as of right now are endless because not everything has been exhumed out of the ground. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.